There have been 4 versions of the Fantastic Four. The Corman version, the Fox version with Jessica Alba and Chris Evans, the Fox reboot version with Michael B. Jordan, and this one. So let's face it, this version has a very low bar to clear when it comes up to topping the earlier films. But when we are talking about the MCU, expectations for Marvel fans, in particular MCU fans, are high. So did this version stood shoulder to shoulder with the rest of them, or was it another MCU flop to add to an ever-increasing pile of garbage known as Phase 4 and Phase 5? Let's find out. I'm Meffistoe. Like, share, and subscribe because this is my review of the movie, The Fantastic Four: First Steps.
Welcome to the MCU, by the way. You're joining at a bit of a low point.
The Fantastic Four: First Steps is a comic book adaptation movie of the first family of Marvel. The movie was directed by Matt Shakman and written by Josh Friedman, Eric Pearson, Jeff Kaplan, and Ian Springer. It's been a long time since I had the desire to see anything Marvel. This isn't just because I felt like the circle was complete with Endgame, but also when I did dabble in Phase 4, I saw something very disappointing that left me feeling like I had some homework to do before watching a movie. And of the trio of MCU movie that were expected to come out just this year, the only one I was kind of interested in was the Fantastic Four. Not because of the trailers, I try not to watch those, but from the small amount of stuff that I knew about the movie beforehand, mainly to do with aesthetic stuff. But don't be mistaken, no matter what die-hard Marvel fan believes or consumes, the MCU, story-wise, is a faint shadow of what it achieved. The storytelling and the characters were a big letdown. And maybe, only slightly maybe, the shining light was Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which, to be fair, was a self-contained story filled with an ensemble cast that wasn't trying to contribute to the main storyline. What does that have to do with anything? Well, this is exactly what the Fantastic Four had to deal with coming into presenting a story. So what did we get? A self-contained story that stayed away from the main storyline, told a superhero story using an ensemble cast, and tried to use some, but not all, of the comic book original material. Now, before we continue, I have to say this because I have to be specific. I am not a comic book reader. I'm a movie guy, but I had many friends in the past and in the present that really like the source material and are passionate about it. Plus, some of them are actually content creators. And it's through them that I know all the different backstories of all these different characters that both Marvel and DC have. But when I watch a comic book adaptation movie, I always try to judge it on the face value, meaning I want the movie to tell me the story that I can relate to and make characters that are interesting and relatable. So if I care about them, I care of what they are doing and the story that is being told. And the fact of the matter is, this Fantastic Four movie did it in a very big way. So let's do a brief rundown of the story without any spoilers. The movie is set on an alternative Earth designated 828. The time in it isn't truly defined, but it looks like the world is stuck in some sort of an early 60s kind of a thing. The Fantastic Four are introduced via a short intro telling their story and the deeds that they have done for the city and the world. They were saving the city, they were combating different criminals, and they're always coming on top. But now they're facing a threat so big it is hard to fathom. A Silver Surfer proclaiming the coming of destruction of the Earth by the Devourer of Worlds, Galactus. It is down to our heroes to find a way to tackle these beings and defeat them before there's no Earth left to defend. One of the reasons why I try not to watch too many trailers is the fact that I want the movie to surprise me off the cuff and not try to tell me the story before I step into the movie. So the only information I've got is some of the backstage stuff, but also the earlier movies. And because this is an MCU movie, my expectations were very, very low, and I was completely taken by surprise. This is the first MCU movie, because let's be serious, Deadpool and Wolverine is always an anomaly, that I actually liked. Hell, this is the best MCU movie since Endgame. And let me tell you why. It's a movie that went back into basics. Establish your characters, have defined motivations for all of them, have a little bit of time for each character to develop their own story, have great setups and payoffs, and even have some minor comedic moments woven into this superhero actiony movie that you don't need to outright laugh, but you need to chuckle a little bit. and within this facade of a superhero movie have a heartfelt story using established lore material that is readily available ever since the 60s. I brought up Deadpool and Wolverine for a reason. That movie proved to me that if you treat your fans properly, they will support your film. Putting Wolverine in the yellow suit made that movie just 10% better, and that was missing from the Fox version of the same character. This time, they gave us Galactus as he should look like, and that made the movie 10% better. The rest of the suits actually fit the aesthetics of the 60s they were going for, and not particularly the same suits that they had in the 60s, which is a little bit of a strange of a decision, but it didn't matter to the main story of the movie. It was just aesthetics. This is not super comic book accurate, but it does keep it consistent. And while we're on the subject, this movie took another leaf out of the page of Deadpool and Wolverine, and including something that directly ties into the comic books, and they also did it through a montage of sorts. So maybe Kevin Feige is able to learn something after all these years. Well, maybe not. I don't give him too much credit. They established their powers, and that is that. They just skirt around the problems that they had in the first Fox movie, which is excellent. But when it comes to the actual story, the story made sense. And just like Reed Richards in the movie, they had to stretch the science a little bit, but this is a comic book story. This isn't real life. And this is moving away from the Nolan version of making a superhero movie. So every single time, you don't have to constantly explain how everything works. It just does. So you just focus on the story that they're trying to tell you instead of bogging yourself down with, oh, this isn't how it works in real life. Well, duh. In terms of the casting, I had a lot of reservations when it comes to Pedro Pascal. The man is acting in everything, and most of them fail. And they fail because he is not right for the part. Because I wanted to see Reed Richards. I didn't want to see Pedro. And for the most part, but not all, we got Reed Richards. We got a man that has elastic limbs to a limit and equally elastic mind because he is the smartest man alive. And this is where Vanessa Kirby comes in. I knew she had the chops to outdo Jessica Alba and Kate Mara, and she did just that. She actually personified Sue Storm, and everything that she does in the movie makes sense. But I'll also give props to Eben Moss-Bachrach and Joseph Quinn because they did a great job with The Thing and The Human Torch, respectfully. This is a movie I absolutely thought I was going to hate, but I took my entire family to watch it in order to gauge their response. And I needed someone there to calm me down if the movie pissed me off. But the fact of the matter is, I came out with a smile on my face, and my family wasn't impressed at all. Because in all seriousness, I had a great experience with watching a movie that had no politics, no current day bullshit, and a coherent story that entertained me for a couple of hours and made it make sense. But I will still happily recommend you watch this movie, even if you don't want to see the rest of the MCU. Again, this is a contained story. There's no homework to do before stepping into this movie. It just tells you a Fantastic Four story. And like any MCU movie, stay for the end credit scenes because if you are an MCU fan and you do follow the story, you really don't want to miss that point. But before I sign off, I would like to thank my best friend for telling me a piece of information that at the time seemed to be unrelated, but it made me love the movie just a little bit more than the average person just because I knew of that information. I thank you for watching, and remember, hope is a good thing, maybe even the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. I'll see you on the next video.